let's assume that you have created a phone, right, a mobile phone. It is called FONE. Okay, the name of your brand is FONE, and you want to sell your phone, right? And you have multiple competitors. You have iPhone, Samsung, right, Nokia, and all other competitors. And so now you are wondering how to sell this phone, right? So what you can do, you can go to Amazon or Flipkart or any e-commerce services, right? And then you create your profile. You create a good description of your phone, and you start doing some marketing, and then you convince customers to buy, right? But over the time, you realized that it is not that easy, because brands like iPhone, right, Samsung, these are really famous brands, and why people essentially buy your phone rather than buying the other phones, right? So what you do, you may start thinking about doing something crap, right? So what you can do, you can say create 20-30 such 20-30 accounts, right, on Amazon, on Flipkart, for example, and start writing good comments about your product, right? And all these 20-30 accounts are controlled by you, right? Because that people generally look at the comments, read the comments, and then decide whether to buy a product or not, right? So then over the time, you realize that you are exhausted with resources, because 20-30 accounts may not be enough, right, to write good reviews of your products, right? So what you can do in that case, you may talk to your friends and ask them, start doing some some negative advertisement of your competitors, right? You may ask your friends to write bad reviews about Samsung phones, about iPhones, right? With the hope that when people read those bad reviews, people may start exploring new types of phones, and maybe your phone will pop up and they will decide buying your phone, right? So and I'm pretty sure most of you have experienced the following thing. At least I have experienced, right? So many times we have seen that when we buy something from these e-commerce services, right, with many products, right, there is a hidden coupon, and the coupon, it is sometimes written that if you go and rate the product on the e-commerce services with high rating, and write good reviews, right, and you write it and take the snapshot of your comments and ratings and send it to us. This is the WhatsApp number. Send it to us and we will give you 500 or 100 Paytm cashback. I have experienced this thing many times, right? In fact, I have also written these things on the comments that, look, these are the ways people these days are inorganically boosting the ratings or comments of a product, right? So all these things come under the broad umbrella of offensive activities, harmful activities on social network. So this is a cartoon example. Let me just read this cartoon, right? Say the first cartoon says that, Ashok, we are getting killed by the bad customer reviews online. So this guy has possibly launched some product and many customers have written bad reviews. Now their product is essentially the popularity of the product is basically diminishing, right? So then he's saying that I need you to pretend you are several different customers and write positive reviews, right? Then the other person is saying, doesn't that break some sort of laws? Then he's saying, no, it only crosses some ethical boundaries and violates the terms of services for the website. And depending on your religious views, it might be a hiccup on your way to paradise. Think of the kind of language that he is using. But I am almost positive there won't be any jail, right? Any jail time or eternal, damnation. Then he's saying, well, okay, and be sure to defame our competitors. Just a cartoon example, I'm basically trying to say how people essentially react. Okay, so we will discuss something called sock puppets. Okay, so what are sock puppets? Sock puppets are online social network user accounts controlled by a puppet master, right? Puppet master owns at least another user account in the network, right, which is his or her own account, right? Objective is to encourage to engage in malicious behavior in the network. They collectively manipulate discussions and or behave as trolls to spread hateful contents, right? So the term sock puppet basically originated from the word sock puppet. We all know what is sock puppet. Example of sock puppet is here, which are toys used by puppet master to deliver stories to children. Okay, so so this is the formal definition of a puppet master, an online social network user controlled. So the sock puppet is an online social network user account controlled by a puppet master who owns at least another user account, right? So the question is, how do we detect sock puppets and puppet masters from social networks, right? If you look at Reddit, right, we know what is a post in a Reddit, right? A post in Reddit is basically comment block that is made by a unique user on Reddit, right? The primary post that is made on Reddit, which is not the reply to another post, is called the root post, right? You have root post and you have different comments. Okay, tree like structure again. In a sock puppet group, there always is a primary sock puppet who is almost active in terms of participation in discussions, right? He or she posts significant number of comments online as compared to other sock puppets in the group, right? Other members of the group are secondary sock puppets. You can think of the puppet master as the primary sock puppet and the others are the secondary sock puppets. Any user on Reddit that is not a sock puppet is labeled as ordinary user. So I will use the term post, root post, primary sock puppet, secondary sock puppet, ordinary user in the remaining part of this lecture. Okay. So what is the task here? The task is to identify sock puppets in online social network. So sock puppets cannot be explicitly recognized due to the amount of anonymity allowed in registering users in online social network. You may not want to reveal your own name. You can use some toy names or dummy names to indicate your account. So several alternative strategies employed to obtain ground truth. So that's the difficult task, right? How do you say let's say you have some hypothesis, right? And based on the hypothesis you detect sock puppets. But how do we identify the ground truth sock puppets? How do we evaluate it, right? So in a research by Leskovic and his group published in 2017, the paper is called Army of Me, an Army of Me, right? They used the Wikipedia definition of sock puppet to identify the ground truth sock puppets, right? So what they said is that a sock puppets account that makes similar edits on Wikipedia. Remember, we are considering Reddit, but we are taking the definition of Wikipedia sock puppets to identify the ground truth sock puppets on Reddit. So sock puppets are accounts that make similar edits, accounts that post at similar duration, right, accounts that post from the same IP address, right. But remember, IP address cannot be, IP address can easily be masked, can easily be shielded using several techniques such as, say, using proxies, right. That makes the method, if we use simple IP address, right, that may not be suitable for identifying the ground truth sock puppet. But nevertheless, they basically came up with some ways to identify sock puppet ground truths, right. So what they did is as follows. So they first extract all the Reddit users, right. They removed, they removed 5% of such users, right, which used, which basically used similar type of IP, right. Say for example, there are thousands of such users who use a single IP. Now this is only possible if somebody can use, say, some sort of country wise proxy, right. So they removed all such users who use this kind of country proxy, right. They also removed top 5% accounts that make use of too many different IP addresses. Say if I use, say, 100 or 200 IP addresses, it means that I am sharing, my IP address to others, and I am using others' IP address to, for my purposes, right. So they first removed these two kinds of users, right. Then whatever user set is remaining, they identified their posting behavior, right. So then they select users based on the temporal proximity, right. Basically the idea is that if the user accounts, they post around the same time within a gap of t minutes, right, within a duration of t minutes, where t is, say, 15 minutes, it means that those accounts are controlled by somebody else, right. Say within 15 minutes you see post by a set of users, again another 15 minutes duration you see the same set of users have posted. It means that the puppet master was active at this time and at this time, right. The third strategy was to select users, the remaining users, based on the number of discussions they commented on, right. So the idea is that if some account is used as a puppet, as a sock puppet, that account can be used for for writing many such comments, right. So they used at least 3 such comments for each user to write, to identify the sock puppets. So if there is a group of accounts, group of users who passed this, who qualified this filtering strategy, and who participated at least 3 such comments, right, wrote 3 such comments, those accounts have been filtered as sock puppets. Now this is a heuristic based approach, as you see, but remember this is a ground truth, right. Why is a ground truth? Why this is not a method? Because IP address is something that you can't get, right. Say if you are a normal user, right, how do we get the IP address of another user? IP address can only be accessed by the administrator, say Reddit administrator, Wikipedia administrator. So this group of researchers, Reskovic and his team, they collaborated with Reddit, most probably they collaborated with Wikipedia, and they obtained the IP addresses, and based on that they identified the ground truth sock puppets. Now the task is to come up with a method to detect sock puppets without using these IP addresses. can we look at the network structure? Can we look at the post behavior, right, to identify sock puppets? And then we will tally, we will kind of measure whether the proposed method is similar to the way we basically created the ground truth. Okay. Now let's look at how we can use social network techniques to identify sock puppets. So we have seen how to how to identify the ground truth sock puppets using IP addresses, right? So what they did, they created a reply network. Okay, so in a Reddit setting, if user A has replied to user B, then there's a directed graph, directed edge, right? So a reply network of an online discussion network is a network where a node represents a user and an edge from node A to node B indicates A replied to B's post at least once. Okay, so then they on the reply network, they tried to understand different structural properties. The first one was the page rank of Sockpuppet accounts and the ordinary accounts, right? It turned out that the Sockpuppet, Sockpuppet accounts, Sockpuppets in a network are more central. Okay, if you also look at this figure here, you see these red dots. It's red dots are Sockpuppets. They are essentially at the center of the network, right? This actually indicates that Sockpuppets are more popular than the other ordinary users, right? And while also calculating the page rank value, it turned out that Sockpuppet accounts tend to have a high page rank value compared to the other accounts. This is quite surprising finding. Okay. The second one was to understand the ego network structure, one-hop ego network structure of the Sockpuppet accounts and the ordinary accounts. And once again, it turned out that actually there are three observations based on the ego network. The first observation was that there is almost no difference in terms of the number of nodes and number of and the density of ego network in case of Sockpuppet ego network and ordinary ego network. So there is no difference between the no difference between these two types of ego networks with respect to the number of nodes and the density. Okay, number one. Number two observation was that the average clustering coefficient, right, of the Sockpuppet account is is basically much higher than the clustering coefficient of the other Sockpuppet. I mean, or of the same for the ordinary users. So average clustering coefficient, then the higher average clustering coefficient than the ordinary nodes, right? Almost no difference in terms of the number of nodes and the density, right? And the third observation was, most of the cases Sockpuppet initiated the discussion, right? How do we identify this? Let's say, so this links indicate the discussions, I mean the replies, right? So if you look at the posting time, right, it turned out that majority of the discussions, majority of the replies, right, majority of discussions, initial discussions, right, Sockpuppets initiated the discussion. Okay, you can easily identify it based on the time of posting, right? So in general, Sockpuppets are very active when they are engaged in discussion with other users, right? Now, all these things have been, all these observations have been made based on the ground truth the sock puppet groups that we have already identified based on the IP addresses, right? Let's also look at the linguistic properties. Okay, say sock puppets are aggressive or not, right? Whether sock puppets use more violent content, right? Whether sock puppets use a lot of pronouns, a lot of adjectives, right? Based on that, you can get linguistic traits of both sock puppets and normal users, right? You can also get the profile behavior based on, say, the frequency of post, the number of post, the duration of post, right? Different activities, right? You can also get the community participation trait based on the groups where they belong to and how they react, right? So what they suggest is that you can use these properties, right, to some classifiers, right, and then classify normal sock puppets and sock puppets and ordinary users, right? You can use them in any statistical ML kind of models, say SVM or D-centric kind of models, and then you can classify them. You already have the ground truth and you can use it. Okay, so they Leskovich and team, they did not look at another important factor, which is the trust, right? So there is something called serial puppet master, right? Serial puppet masters serial puppet master is somebody who is actively and repeatedly involved in some social network, and say for example there is a political agenda, there is a brand advertisement, there is a social media campaign. This puppet master is always invited, always recruited to create such dummy accounts, sock puppets, and promote or demote this agenda or brands or whatever, right? So they are called serial puppet masters, right? So now if you look at the sock puppets in a group, right, individual sock puppet detection doesn't make much sense, right? If you are able to detect the group together, you would be able to identify the puppet master as well. So the method that I have discussed so far, right, it can identify sock puppet accounts and ordinary accounts, right? But it is not able to identify sock puppet groups, right? So in 2013, right, there was a method proposed by Boo et al., right? And in this method, they basically came up with a simple approach but effective approach to identify sock puppet groups, okay, based on some heuristics. We will discuss this process here. So they define something called the attitude. So attitude of a user towards a post, attitude of a user towards an event, right? Now this attitude can be thought of as stance, right, or emotion or sentiment, right, whatever, right? So if you look at the attitude of this group of sock puppets, right, their attitude should always be same towards certain product which they want to promote or demote, right? So in this research, they want to formulate a way to measure the attitude, okay? So they model attitude using a normal simple NLP based approach, right? So in a sentence, if you are aware of NLP, in a sentence constituting of different words, so these words are called tokens, okay? So let's assume that let's assume that each such word is associated with some sort of connotation, right? Some sort of sentiment, right? Say there is a word called amazing, it's a positive token, right? There is a word called awful, this is a negative token, and there is a word called city, it's a neutral token, right? So to every token we can associate some sort of score, some sort of sentiment score, or whatever connotation that you want to assign, right? So then the orientation, right? Orientation of a text K, a text is a sentence, a post, right, towards a topic P. Say there's a user U who has written a post, right, K, right, on a topic P. You want to identify the orientation of this post towards topic P, right? So this is a quality of the text that determines whether a text is supporting or opposing that particular topic, right? Supporting texts have orientation 1 and opposing text have orientation 0, okay? So the orientation of a post K is the average of the scores of the connotations of the tokens present in the text. Say the movie is awful. If you look at the connotation, the is a neutral statement, neutral token, movie is a neutral token, and awful is a negative token, right? So the overall 0, say if neutral is 0, or say if neutral is 0.5, 0.5 plus 0.5 plus 0. So the overall overall connotation is 0.5 plus 0.5 plus 0 by 3, 1 by 3, okay? Now trust, right, of a user I towards a topic P is the sum of orientation of all the posts that the user has written so far towards the topic P, right? NP is the number of replies the user has written so far. OKP is the orientation, and it is normalized, right? So average orientation, it lies between 0 to 1, right? So if it is 0.5, then it is neutral. If it is greater than 0.5, the positive, otherwise negative, right? So higher value of trust determines a greater degree of support towards a given topic, okay? Then let's define another quantity. It is called attitude consistency. So the attitude consistency is defined by this judgment function delta, right? So delta xy, if both x and y are greater than 0.5, then it is or both x and y are less than 0.5, then this is 1, otherwise 0, okay? So the attitude consistency is the sum of all the posts of I and j towards topic P, and then we look at the judgment function. If both I and j together support a few topics, or together support all the topics, then it would be it would tend to be 1, right? If they together oppose, it would be 0. If they are both neutral, it would be 0.5. So for a pair of users, now I have something called attitude consistency, okay? So as you see here, attitude consistency is higher, right, indicates greater degree of consistency, right. Here's an example. So user I, user J, topic A, topic B, you see that both of them have high trust, which is greater than 5. Therefore, with respect to topic 1, attitude consistency is 1. For this, this is positive, this is negative, so different, delta would be 0, this would be 0. So 1 plus 0 by 2, okay. For this one, different, right, 0, different, 0, so 0 plus 0 by 2, same, 1, different, this is also same, negative but same, 1, so 1 plus 1 by 2. For this one, with respect to A, both of them have greater than 0.5, so 1. With respect to B, same, 1. With respect to C, different, so 0, 1 plus 0 by 3, sorry, this would be by 3, okay. So in this way, you can identify the trust or some sort of attitude consistency between a pair of users, right. So then what you can do, you can create a network, right, and this network is called similar view network, okay. Here users are nodes, right, and if a pair of users is connected, if they have replied to at least significant number of posts, right, and there is another, so let's say this is I and this is J, right, there should be a set of comments or set of replies that they have made to another user P, where P is not equals to I and P is not equals to J. It means that I and J have interacted with at least another one more user, okay. This is condition 1 for creating an edge. Condition 2 is their attitude consistency should be greater than 5, right, and the third condition is with respect to the time, right. The time of posting should be less than theta. That means they have more or less posted around the same time. So if all of these 3 things satisfy, then you create an edge between I and J, okay. So this is called similar view network. Example, this is the activity orientation network, this positive negative views based on the attitude consistency. Then from this you create a similar view network, right. Now on the similar view network, what this guy proposed is that you can actually filter out nodes based on their posting behavior, okay. So you can incorporate some sort of authorship identification techniques, right, and you can prune edges further from this SVN similar view network, right. You can prune some edges, right. On that you can further run a commutative algorithm, a clustering algorithm. So when you run clustering algorithms, you should be able to identify group of users who behave in a similar manner. Their attitudes are same, right, towards similar topics, and they may be sock puppets, they may be sock puppet groups, right? So in this particular approach, they try to identify sock puppet groups, right? Whereas the previous one, they identified sock puppets in individual accounts. So this is about sock puppet. In the next lecture, we will discuss the black market driven activities and how we can detect those activities using social network theory. Okay, thank you.